there. So this time I'm gonna be talking about the second part or part two of the endocrine system. I have did the prior basis of short anatomy and the physiology and the thyroid glands. This time I'm gonna be talking about with my notes a long time ago when I was studying, and I hope that this could help. So I'm going to explain this to you guys. Okay, I have explained there on the part A or of the the endocrine system that from the hypothalamus. It is the control of the releasing of different hormones. So there's that releasing hormones that will be secreted from the hypothalamus, and it will go to the pituitary gland. I'm having a hard time in pronoun, pronouncing that. And we all know that the PG or pituitary gland is a hypophysis, right? Meaning it has two lobes. So one is called the posterior, and one is the anterior. The posterior is innervated by the motor neurons, so it's still part of the brain, whereas anterior is innervated by a portal system. Sorry, I've talked about portal systems. Um, in the body, portal system is when the capillary bed expanded and turned into two capillary bed, and there's tubules or blood vessels in between. There's that more extra process versus that exchange. Okay, so just make sure that we know that. Okay, so we all know that based on what I have explained there, that you know the anterior PG will release the ACTH, right? And then, or the adrenocorticotropic hormone. When you say the word tropic, meaning it's also stimulating. Okay, you can see the word stimulating as well. And or the thyroid, releasing hormone, where it goes from the thyroid. And when you see trophic hormones, these are the four trophic hormones: that TRH, thyroid releasing hormone, and or stimulating hormone, right? And the adrenocorticotropic hormone. Okay. And for the non-trophic is the growth hormone. I'm also going to be talking about that briefly. And the prolactin, which is the exocrine gland. Endocrine gland is the one that absorbs and secretes, whereas exocrine gland is just excretes. So I'm gonna be talking the difference when for the growth hormone briefly. Growth hormone from the hypothalamus, it will be releasing some growth hormone, and obviously what it will stimulate is the growth. So I'm going to be talking about the disorder acromegaly. I believe I have mentioned this, but I want to mention it again because for the growth hormone. I made a separate video in detail, but just to mention this because this is also part of um, the endocrine system. Um, and then if there's that deficiency, dwarfism happens. Okay, I want you guys to differentiate what's the difference between giantism and acromegaly. Okay, giantism is increase in height, and it's happening during during the period of the growing stage, right? And acromegaly is just where there's that enlargement of the forehead, the the mandible, and the fingers. Okay, if you can Google, you know, you can see what I'm trying to say, because I'm not equipped to give you some pictures or any um, editing apps that I can do, but my technique here is so that I can explain to you guys. Perhaps I'm not giving you some proper pronunciation and proper, but in a storyline of how I'm telling you at the end, if you watch it from the beginning to end, you'll realize, you'll know, because the body's a complex. You need to put time and study, and even this, you have to go through your anatomy back and forth, and it's a long process of trying to put those information into a permanent information. Okay, so so I'm going to be talking about the LH and the FSH, which are the other two hormones that's being released by the anterior hypophysis, which is released by the pituitary gland on the anterior. Okay, so the LH hormone, luteinizing hormone, um, just like when we have the pills, because the pills mimics how our menstrual cycle, right? Follicle stimulating hormone, um, when a body's cycle, right? It's the membrane is full of like some lots of like shedding or red blood cells or lots of blood. Um, it will be shed or tear when when we get our period. That means it's we are not pregnant, right? Because when it's full of blood, all the membrane is in preparation for, let's say, if you get pregnant, for a fetus development, so it's nourished by blood. So if that after that process, that's why it goes through that cycle. So if that doesn't happen, if you doesn't end up being pregnant, it sheds or it tears. That's why menstruation happens, right? All those blood or red blood cells has to excrete by a process, right, of an extricate gland. It will eventually has to excrete from our body, and that's when it's like a saying that the uterus is in tears because it's not pregnant, so it's shredding some blood. Okay, hopefully you can remember that. Okay, so hormones are composed of amino acids, either proteins or steroids. I mentioned it in the part A, but I'm going to mention it again quickly. And steroids are usually lipophilic. It's usually binding by intracellular receptors. And for the okay, so I wanted to mention just the location. I know this is not about the thyroid, but the laryngeal prominence, the Adam's apple for men, that's called the laryngeal prominence, right? And from the superior notch, where the mediastinum is, um, yeah, the mediastinum, and then the laryngeal prominence, where the Adam's apple, that's where our thyroid is located. Okay, so just to for you guys to know. Okay, and it has a cascading effect where it's going to have a negative feedback. Okay, now I'm going to be talking about the hormone, I believe, is the adrenal gland. Okay, but the rest I'll be talking in full detail. I've done a few already. I'm gonna just post it, depending on the signal strength on my house here. But for the adrenal gland, so what's happening is that it's going to target the adrenal gland, coming from the cortex. It's going to release cortisol, that will increase the blood glucose, the blood pressure, also the blood volume, and it's going to stimulate the fight and flight. Okay. Um, and the last information before I go to the RAAS is the renin angiotensin aldosterone system. I'd like to talk about that next. I'm gonna be mentioning how I mentioned before how the carbohydrates are broken down, and also the like proteins into a simple amino acids, polypeptides into simple, if it's polysaccharides into simple, monosaccharides, and all those stuff. And if there's any energy sources, for any increasing blood, we have to keep in mind that for the aldosterone, the increase of the sodium and reabsorption, that's what the function is. And because if it's the increase of sodium, there's also increase of water, H2O, because where the solute is, right, it's going to follow it, right, and again the blood pressure goes up. Okay. And for the adrenal gland, sorry, there's two composition, just like our brain. It's composed of the cerebral cortex because of the cerebrum, right? Cerebellum is at the back, right? The cerebrum. So there's that covering, that's that gyrus, and it looks like it's all like wormy looking. It has that fissures and all that. That's the cortex. That's the outer lining of the brain. Okay, just like the adrenal gland, it also has that cortex. So it has the adrenal cortex, just like the brain also has the medulla oblongata. The adrenal gland also have that adrenal medulla. Okay, so keep that in mind. Adrenal cortex and adrenal medulla. Okay, so if we're talking about cortex, the outer part, if we're talking about the medulla, it's in the inner part. Okay, so from there, the adrenaline and then non-adrenaline, right? And the androgens are also, for the secondary production, sort of sex hormones. Okay, and that's the other function as, our the cortisol and then the aldosterone. Okay, so keep that in mind. So for the glucocorticoid, there's that decrease of blood glucose. Maya, you okay? Okay, my daughter's so sad. Okay, so produced by the hypothalamic. I'm just gonna be explaining. It's going through the pituitary gland, but the posterior portion, which is innervated by the neurons, right? So it's going to be releasing the ADH hormone, which is the antidiuretic hormones, which is also going to be counter affecting. It'll be used for the RAAS, which I'm going to be doing the video next. And this function is also for the osmosis and maintenance of the plasma, or the osmolarity, right? Or it will increase the water retention, right? It's because where the solutes are, it will increase sodium and all that. And we all know the osmotic is 300. Okay, so what mainly the aldosterone will do is decrease the renal blood pressure. It will also decrease the plasma or the sodium, and it will increase the potassium. Okay, we don't want for the potassium to go outside of the cell, and it goes into some sort of disorder that all our body will get into like a sort of like not functioning or relaxation. We don't want that, so make sure that that's not going to be happening. But I'm going to be doing another video with regards to that, so that I'm getting distracted. My children just in and out. Okay, so I just have the notes here that said the increase of water absorption and potassium excretion. Okay, I'm going to be doing the renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system next. Okay.